Have you heard of Wim Hof or the Iceman?
Um, have I heard of the
Yeah,
Iceman?
yeah. His name is Wim Hof, Wimhof.
I mean, I know from the comics, Iceman.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
yeah.
I'm
So,
not.
this guy Wim Hof, his wife committed suicide 30 years ago,
Oh,
and after his wife committed suicide, and so rarely will a woman with children commit suicide. And I think he had 4 children, and he was somewhere in Europe and up in like the mountains, and his intuition told him to go into the cold,
no kidding.
and he ended up breaking 28 world records based on being so he can stay in cold and keep his vitals at the same level for an hour and a half.
Wow.
And he broke 28 world records, and like 2 of them have to do with extreme heat, like running a 100-mile marathon in extreme heat with no water, without drinking any water. So mainstream media, mainstream medicine, not media, mainstream medicine studied him, and it was awesome that he would happen to be an identical twin. Do you want Dr. Russ to join us?
No, he was just saying if he wants to jump in on the discussion, of course.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Welcome.
I didn't know if like you owed him money or something, so I just didn't want to like make it really awkward for
No,
you.
no, it's just a community of love, man.
Yeah, I'm just checking. Hello.
Hey, Russ.
So
Hey Ben, how you doing?
let me finish talking about
No, go ahead.
talking about Wim Hof. So he ends up breaking the record, and mainstream medicine studied him, and he was able to put poison into his body, and with breath and with this breath that he learned from going in the cold and the mental mindset, he was able to do it. So I would take a look at that, because one of the things I tell people in layman's terms, that cold showers do the same thing that CBD does in some ways. If somebody's not necessarily open to it, and I'm all about experiential. I don't really even talk much about cannabis. When people come to my parties, I like to partner with people like you, but I will sit there and say, just like, it's all about the experience. I'm not here to tell you what it is and what it isn't. I mean, does your back feel better? Try this sample, that situation.
Right on.
So why don't you go ahead and introduce the other doctor?
Russ, no, I'll leave it to him. Russ, you have the stage.
That was the best introduction.
That's awesome. I love those, man. Those are the best introductions. I don't even know. I saw what you guys were talking about, but I didn't hear a room reset. But anyway, yeah, Ben, I've been following your stuff for a while, and I do know who Wim Hof is. I live in a ski town. I'm a cardiac surgeon. Here's my bio. I'm a cardiac surgeon, and I think outside the box. And so, this in the ski towns, there's a lot of people doing all kinds of alternative stuff, big, chiropractic, naturopaths, breathing methods. And I actually I started a performance medicine clinic with a guy named Eric Hyden, who won 5 gold medals, right? Some people may know him. And so I've gotten exposed to some of those high performance people. And that breathing is really incredible, really important. So I do acknowledge Wim Hof. I think he's a freak of nature, but it's all in the mind, right?
Did you know he has an identical twin?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
So that's
I just find it fascinating.
Yeah.
And now, the highest performance guys and women do a lot of that ice bath breathing and all that stuff. It's crazy. But what I wanted to jump in, because you were talking about the placebo effect, which actually we know by science is it's a real thing. But to Ben's point, the endocannabinoid system is, it's actually one of the biggest tragedies of our time, right? Because, I hate talking about myself, but let me just back up and say one thing. 2 years ago, I was the CEO of a company, a startup that we were backed by Bill Gates's Invention Science Fund. And the whole point of what I wanted to do before the whole thing blew up because of greed and all the other stuff that goes into that was to develop cannabis products for the clinics, right? I mean, the way I see it, you should be going to get, knee surgery, and the anesthesiologist should say, do you mind, is it what's your first name?
My first name's Steve.
Steve,
Yeah.
right? And if the anesthesiologist would say, "Hey, Steve, do you mind if we use a cannabis-based anesthetic today instead of a narcotic-based anesthetic, right? Or opioid, right?" That's my vision, right? And that's real. And this one of the sad things is that because of the last several generations, and I don't know whether it was their mindset or what it was, but I mean, here we are in the middle of a pandemic where they were doing research on shit that can really kill you and kill half the world, but you weren't even allowed to do research on cannabis. I mean, what was it, Ben? Like you were allowed to get like an ounce, like there was like 4 people in the country that were allowed to get like an ounce every 6 months.
It's not quite that dramatic. And by the way, it was racism. That's plain and simple what it was. It was politicians trying to suppress the black vote, black strength.
Interesting.
To some extent, there was some Mexican anti-Hispanic sentiment, not far off from what we saw in the last administration. But yeah, no, I wouldn't mince words about it. It's very plainly racism.
Oh, I thought they were coming down on teenagers when I was in the 80s.
Well, but this was going to corrupt your teenagers like the black,
Yeah.
Whatever it was.
I see.
It was not anything complex. It was. So wait a minute. Let me elaborate, because racism certainly was the thrust, but it began with greed too. There's a guy named William Randolph Hearst in the 30s that owned. He owned the paper companies. He owned the newspaper companies. He also owned the trees that the paper was made from. And an invention called the decorticator came out and could chop up hemp and make paper faster than he could make out of his oak trees. So he made a deal with Harry Anslinger to make it illegal. And Anslinger, as a good Catholic racist, brought it up and found his way to make it a racist agenda. Same like Trump did.
Yeah, well, my only point was that, we were blocked from really doing the real research. And
I'm sorry,
now,
I was going to jump on that too. So actually, doctors and scientists can study cannabis. All you need is FDA license, which isn't that hard to get. But part of the problem was
now you can.
You could then too, even as a Schedule 1 since 1930, whatever. It's studyable. Just you have to go through the rigmarole to get the license. And doctors, researchers just didn't want to do it.
That's amazing that they didn't want to do it, right? Because now the
crappy weed too. So not only were they blocked from an easy path, but the stuff they were studying was crap anyway.
Oh, see, this is why I joined, because I'm learning so much. Yeah. So anyway, just like the number of grants that have come out in the last couple of years to just study the mechanism of action. I mean, there's a million of them, like you mentioned. I mean, everything from, anti-anxiety, anorexia, pain, they're all real. And I'm not I absolutely used when I was younger. I don't use cannabis right now. I don't have a need for it. But, I do use CBD, right? And that's real, I mean, there's a real effect there. And we don't even know all the mechanisms actually. I mean, we've defined the endocannabinoid system, but all the compounds that are in